This is Wildman Robbie Paige, and you're listening to Three Count Podcast.
I'm in fashion, heroic.
Everybody, to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Waiting to Ring, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. And by our 300-something episode, season 4, you should just already know what to say. I am your Sherpa. But like every good Sherpa, it's never about me. It's about who's into the ring. So who's into the ring today? You see him right there, okay? You can find this man at SWA, HWF, WDWA. You can find this man at Eclipse, EWA, Fight Pro, NWO, and WXW. He is the Wild Man, Robbie Paige.
What's going on, Red Dog?
What up, baby? It's been a while.
Yeah, I'll see you this Sunday.
Yeah, so for those who are unaware, we are actually going to be at HWF. That will be on March 12th, even though you guys, this episode will already come out by the time you guys get see this. But if you guys were at HWF, hi. Hope we did a great job.
Yeah, you got a pretty important match, and I'm defending the extreme heavyweight title this will be my first title defense. So
Yeah, it's definitely wild, man. The fun thing about it though is I love like sharing the locker room with you because like you have like this like positive energy that's like always kind of like exuding, and you're like always like willing to like help out young kids or people who are green in the business and like help them develop and grow. So it's always kind of it sounds kind of weird, especially because like my name's Red Dog. It's always a treat to see you, if that makes sense.
Hey man, I appreciate it because I've been through a lot. I have a lot of stories, a lot of stuff I've been through just from before I got into wrestling, training, the stuff you go through, and like I got in like in between, like when there was still a little bit of hazing before, you could just buy a pair of wrestling boots and call yourself a wrestler nowadays, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's start this off. Who is Robbie Paige?
Well, let's just say Robbie Paige is just your normal everyday guy. I work a job. Brought up the hard way. Work hard. Pay your dues in life. Pay your dues wherever you know what I mean. You always gotta work. So I have no problem with putting in the time and the effort and all that stuff. So, but I've always been intrigued with wrestling. I was a big martial arts guy growing up. So like my first memory of wrestling was like WrestleMania 4. So, but anyway, getting back to your question, I ramble a lot. Robbie Paige is, I'm willing to help, like you say, but when I'm getting ready to get in that ring, I get in that wrestling mode. I put on that face paint. I go deeper, like I dig down deep, like everything that I know that I want, like my abilities inside that ring. When I put that face paint on, I feel like not like a superhero, but like a vigilante that would like help those in need if needed. I'm willing to give my shirt off my back to help somebody else. I've always been like that. It's just hard to find people that are like that these days, and you get it's hard to answer that question, man. It's like because you live your life every day. It's like a mixture of both, because they say your character in the ring is supposed to be amplified who you are, and in a way that is, I put on that face paint. It makes me a little bit more it brings out a little bit more in me. And, I see the fans and the audience, the kids with my face paint on and stuff, it kicks that extra gear that you didn't know you had, but for me, it's like, there's not much of a separation except, because I've always been into martial arts. I've always liked wrestling. I've been athletic pretty much my whole life. I've had the trials and tribulations that you go through that hold you back from getting places that maybe you could have been. But I've done the traveling. I've done the every aspect you could do in this business. I've done it. And I'm willing to help others that are willing to listen and have the respect, to listen, and I'm always learning stuff too. I've been in this business almost 20 years, and you meet somebody at a show that you've never met before that's trained somewhere else or whatever. You learn something every time you step in the locker room at wrestling. And that's something that a lot of the younger generation don't understand. Like, they think, you know, they learn some moves and get some gear, and that's all they need to know because they got a spot on the show. And that's, not, it's not really what it's about. A lot of the the traditional aspects of wrestling, in my opinion, I've been around, I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of things happen, so in my opinion, a lot of the traditional stuff is like lost. Some of the traditional stuff, yeah, maybe had to like kind of change a little bit over time, but back to the core of what wrestling is, it is a is it a it's a sport. Yeah, it's an art form of a sport that is entertaining to people and is also athletic. You have to have some kind of athletic ability to be a wrestler. It's not all show. It's not all, you know, charisma and talking and stuff. You have to be able to move around, and the people that have that awesome athletic ability that can wow you and stuff like that, that's kind of some of the things that caught my eye when I was young. Like when I was younger, just to be rambling, when I was younger, what caught your eye was like the flashy wrestlers, because I was like big in like to like the Road Warriors and the Rockers and the Ultimate Warrior and Hogan and all that, because it was like big and flashy and it caught your eye as a kid, right? But when you get older and like you develop that love where you're like, man, I want to do this when I get older, and I used to, back in the day when the internet started, there was tape trading. So you would trade tapes from all over the United States with people, different wrestling and stuff. And I had a wall in my room in my basement of my house in later days, man. I had like three bookcases filled with like 500 and some different, all over the world kind of wrestling. And I studied tape like before I even got into wrestling. like like I was like something that I was like, man. And when I got into wrestling, that's when you, you start taking from wrestlers that you want to emulate and bring it in, and make it your own and make your own style or your own. And I'm kind of like, I always kind of say my style is like high impact martial arts. There's, I can do technical, I can do ground, I can, any kind of wrestling I can do. But I like, when I first started, I did a lot more high flying, and you get a lot more injuries, and the high flying starts to go down a little bit. So you have to like kind of like find your happy medium. And I think I've, kind of found that the last handful of years, and I can still do stuff to wow people, and I can have a great match and tell a story and be very athletic and show my skill and not risk my body or stuff like that. And you have to learn that over time. That's what wisdom and experience. After you beat your body up so much, you finally learn to not do that dive anymore, or the leg drop, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I want to touch on a couple points that you brought up, right? Really, like just from the jump, right? So something you talked about was like with the face paint, right? That you put it on and you become like you get entrenched into like your new quote unquote character, right? Because it's something like I talk about on this show pretty often now, right? Is that so for me it's my mask, right? It's the black mask. It's well actually I have three new ones now, so you guys get to check those out every once in a while. But the black mask that I usually wear to the ring, anytime I put it on, I just feel like I just become like a new person, right? Even though it's just me. But I always talk about like when you look at like the House of Cliff, for those who don't know, like me off camera, like just in a locker room or something, I'm usually kind of like low energy. Like I try not to be like I'm very sociable, but I'm not like, hey yo, what's going on? Right. But when you meet podcast, Cliff, right? Red Dog, right? He's like a little bit more upbeat. He's like, hey, yo, what's going on? Let's have these cool conversations, blah, 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 blah. Let's talk. But then when you go to a wrestling show and you meet Red Dog, who lives at the very top of that house, like it's a whole nother ball of energy that just like comes out, right? Very like, hey, what's going on? Like I'm that guy. Like I want to introduce you to me and my favorite things I like to talk about. And like it's crazy to think about like how we live with these characters in our different houses and stuff like that, and how like one or two items can change everything. So, in this aspect where I'm in a locker room, I'm getting changed, I can even have the red suit on. But as soon as I put that mask on, man, I just feel like I like a whole new level like gets elevated inside me, and I'm just like I'm back to being like this upbeat, super high energy character that like people like get gravitated to. And it's one of those things that you were talking about, like as you put your face paint on, like you feel yourself become like the wild man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and it goes further than that too. It's like you live your everyday life and you have your everyday routine and you do your everyday thing, but on the day of wrestling, when you wake up in that morning, you have a different routine. You have a different mindset. You feel different inside, and you know what I'm talking about because you do what I do, right? You work all week, and then on the weekends, you do what you love, right? Right. Not saying
Mm-hmm.
you don't, love what you do during the week, but I'm just saying we all do this wrestling thing because deep down inside, it's got a hold of us somehow, some way. You and so for me, it's when I get up in the morning, it's a different mindset, and then when I get in the car and I start driving to the venue, then I listen to certain songs that get me in that wrestling mode. And then when I get to the show and I step through the doors and I shake everybody's hand and all that stuff, everything that was outside of that venue before I came at that moment in time doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is that wrestling mindset. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
kind of like transforms like your mind, and then you get in the locker room and you start getting ready, and this is where like I'm putting on the face paint, I'm putting on the wrist tape, and you start thinking, and you start the wheels start turning, and you're like, okay, so what am I going to do tonight? What do I feel like? How's my body feeling? What do I feel like I can do tonight? Oh, that starts running, then your blood starts flowing, that adrenaline starts kicking in, and then people start showing up and fans start talking to you, and it never decreases, it just keeps on. And then you step through that curtain, and then bam, it's like nothing can hurt you, nothing can stop you. It's that feeling. and you can't even describe it unless you actually are doing it. And you know what I'm saying? Like, and I have that feeling the whole time. And 40 minutes home, that adrenaline starts dissipating, and
Yeah.
the pain starts arising, and the sleep deprivation starts settling in, and the next day you wake up and you just feel like, oh my goodness, what did I do last night? But you do it again, and 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 that's what separates certain people from other people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah, no, I 100% understand exactly where you're coming from, especially because like my month of March has been ridiculous this year, which is probably like, the most shows that I've worked. Um, and it's like you go through all this stuff and then you got to do it all over again the next morning, and you're just as excited like the next day as you were the day previously, right? So like for instance, like if we're working like SWA on a Saturday and then like an HWF on a Sunday, we wake up Sunday morning, we're like, oh man, I feel like I got hit by a truck, but I'm ready to do this all over again. And then you go and you do it again. It's one of those things, man. It's like being in a wrestling business, and something that you talked about too was like a lot of respect, right? Like this business is a lot of respect of like other people as well as respecting yourself. Because remember, at the end of the day, like when you're injured or you're hurt or something, like the next day you go into like another person's locker room and you're like, hey, like you want to also make sure that you're taking care of that person, but then you also want to make sure you're taking care of yourself too, because when you start to not take care of yourself, that's when the problems really become a problem. Like then somebody else, you're putting someone else's life at risk because you're not taking care of yourself. And it's one of those things where you have to be mindful because like you were talking about, right? Like you like throughout the years, right? Like and I know this with other wrestlers too. So it's but you like you're doing all these high flying spots because you can hit them because it's cool. But then what ends up happening is that like you start to take a toll on your body and you're not able to do the same things that you once were able to do. So you have to find, and like you said, that happy medium of what, like, hey, I can do some high risk things, but I want to do all these high risk things, but I want to do like this move or that move, and then you got to adjust the way that you do them, so that way not only is it safe for you, but it's safe for your opponent to take too. And it's crazy to think about like how much like goes into everything, because like how you were talking about, you said you want to make sure that your body's taken care of, right? What can my body do today for this match that I got coming up, right? I want to sell out for the audience, but then again, like I can't do too much because I'm afraid I might either a really injure myself or two injure somebody that I might be working with. So
well,
it's
and not
cool to
only that,
hear.
and not only that, what a lot of fans don't realize is, we're not on TV. We're not making a lot of money. We have regular jobs that we have to work every week to pay our bills. Wrestling helps, but wrestling is not feeding our children and stuff like that. Not at our level, and that's
Right.
just being honest, God's honest truth. So in my younger years, take more risks, hoping for a better reward, but at my later years, I can still do the 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 same stuff, impact, action packed, but I don't have to take as much risk, and it still means the same. It's just all on how you do it and how you build up to a certain move or how you put over a certain move. There's always a way to adjust and change your moves or the way you move in the ring, things you do. You know, you can make your body last longer if you're willing to change things about the way you do things. Does that
And that's
make
where it
sense?
comes from. Yeah, that's what it makes a lot of sense. Because like I know for me, right? Like I'm not honest with y'all. Y'all know this, but I'm 37, right? Like we kind of like we're just kind of around like the way we're built. And then so I'm honest when I tell this, I heavily rely on character work, right? Because at the end of the day, like if I'm relying on my character work, the moves that I hit are going to mean something. But then like also like I'm not putting my body through as much damage as like what I don't know somebody who wants to hit a 630 and just crash and burn on the mat. Like I'm not trying to do all that. I just know that if I hit a certain move and I do it at a certain time, the crowd's gonna get I'm gonna get a reaction from the crowd, and then not only am I gonna get that reaction out of the crowd, it's gonna be funny because usually some kind of comical spot gets hit with it, right? And I think that's where like you have to know like when you build this world up around your character, like you have to know what your character is about. Like I always ask, like I don't say always, that's wild. But I ask myself questions all this the majority of the time around my character, right? I'm like, does Red Dog like vanilla or chocolate ice cream, right? And from there, it's like I ask those questions because the more you develop the world, the better you get an understanding what your character looks like and how he reacts to different moves. He or she, right? I don't want to be exclusive, but in this case, for me, how does he react to this or that? Oh, well, he'd react this way to this. Like, oh, okay. So then I can build my wrestling style around how my character looks, and then I can rely more on character work than I have to do on wrestling moves. So that way I can save my body for a longer time period.
And with me, I, I like, I believe in realism and believability and telling the story, not just hitting move after move after move. Like, yes, and I will admit, in my younger years, I did a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have done, but you're wet behind the ears and you're trying to impress people and stuff like that. But that's all part of the learning process of what we do. And nowadays, instead of doing a bunch of this, a bunch of that, I build up to something, one big thing that means the same and has the same impact as somebody doing four things. And people remember that more.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that's it's the one aspect that I've kind of leaned on, like Sicken, right, to like help with because like I know the one thing that he's always talked about was like developing a move set that you can kind of hit on everybody, so that way like anybody who hears about it will be like, oh, I'm willing to take that instead of like hey, I'm gonna go try this shooting star press that I've never hit before on practice or anywhere else. I'm just gonna try it here for the first time. It's like yeah, no. So whenever I put my stuff together, and I tell people I have like 5 or 6 basic moves that I like to hit, and that's kind of it because any more after that is just you're just I feel like sometimes you're just doing way too much.
Yeah, and depending on the time length of your match and how you start it off and how you build it up, you can do a minimum amount of moves and still have a solid 10-minute match. I mean, it's just all about working, being able to have an opponent that can, uh, how can I say it, like an opponent that can either follow or lead you in that situation, because I mean, there's a time and a place that calls for extra moves and stuff like that, but not in every single match. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of what is lost in wrestling. Like there's not a lot of people telling a story of why am I wrestling this guy? It's just this guy's wrestling this guy, and let's see who can do the most of what and kick out of how many whatever. And it doesn't really, you know what I mean? Like people, yeah, you're gonna wow the people for that moment, but that match that's on that card that tells a story and there's more of that drawing the fans in with their emotions and they get behind that baby face way more, and when that baby face gets that big pop when he wins, the fans are going to remember that versus the match that had all these moves and this and that. I mean, that's my opinion, and everybody has their opinion. But I tend to, people that I talk to or fans that I meet, you know, they remember certain moments, not, you know, like, oh, I remember when, you know, kicked out of three super kicks and got beat with a power driver on the floor, you know, or whatever. They remember that um, you were getting the crap beat out of you, and somehow you pulled off a win or what. It's, to me, that's what drew all the people back in the day. You know, it, back then our independents back then were drawing tens of thousands of people. We're lucky to draw 200. You know, in some places. You know what I'm saying? And guys on the indie scene were making a living. And that's all they did. They could pay their bills and feed their children back in the day because people believed in it and wanted to come see it. And that's what's lost, man.
But it
In
also
my
goes back to
in my
like I
opinion.
think well, and I kind of I agree, right? And I think a lot of it too, and maybe for me, I might be a little I don't know, off course, but I feel like a lot of it too is that people aren't drawn to like characters. Well, that's not fair. They're coming back to characters, right? I think a lot of people back in the day were always talking about how um they're they like you said, like everybody was hitting, like one person would hit a 450, and I remember the first person that I saw ever hit a 450 was like Juventud Guerrero, right? Then after that, like I started seeing more people. Like I saw Billy Kidman hit his shooting star press, and I was like, holy crap, I don't know what this is, but I was drawn to Billy Kidman because of that. And then I started seeing like other people like do wrestling moves and stuff like that, and I never remember seeing like but like seeing good characters, like you get attached to those characters because of how they draw into the bit, how they drew you into the business, right? Whether they're like, for me, like Rey Mysterio, I was always attached to him because he was like always the underdog, but he was like always in bright colors, so I grew to like him. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, John Cena, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man. You look at people like Junkyard Dog, right? You get attached to all these characters, but instead, what ended up happening is that everybody was looking for the cool spots to hit, and then you kind of started getting away from like the character aspect of things, and people kind of left because that's what they're drawn to, is good characters. We don't
It,
talk about like the one time that one character went on a venture, right? But we can talk about, hey, we still talk about Red Riding Hood like that shit happened yesterday, and it was a story that came out years and years ago. So it's weird, like people,
and
they
that's
they'll
what,
talk about their moves.
and that's another thing is like the certain moves back in the day went to certain people, and that's part of what their persona was. They were known for a certain move, but now to have everybody has everybody's finisher, this and that and all that. So what what can make you want? What makes the fans want to come see you? Because everybody's got a super kick, everybody's got a splash, everybody's got a slam, everybody's got a, you know what I mean? It's your persona, your character, how you react with the fans and bring them into who you are, your story. There's not a lot of that nowadays, building up characters and you know telling the people who they are, and that's what helps draw people. That's what helps put asses in seats. That's what helps pay for tickets to put money in our pockets. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And I would look at it too. That's why, like, whenever I do my promos and stuff like that, like, people are starting to see like the Adventures of Red Dog is like a new thing that, I'm so happy that I get to work with someone like Jason Heat, because he has like such a great mind for like a performing art, right? Versus like just like you see people do promos all the time, but his mind and the way it works and the way I hit him up and ask him for advice and stuff, it's so cool because like he's able to tell me like, hey, I would do this and not that, or I would do this and do this, and like I can build my character's world up based off of that. So it's fun to create like a character like this and to keep diving into the world. But I know other people get attached to the character too. So a lot of people see Red Dog, they love seeing Red Dog work, right? and they want to see what new promos that we're gonna do, right? So like we'll use the perfect example of HWF, right? Recently, and I say this recently, last year I lost my dog Duke. Love my dog to death, but he passed away from cancer, and I ended up getting him made into a cartoon, right? And I added him to a T-shirt. So if you go on my site, you guys can all see the shirts there. But anyway, I took Duke and I put him in a promo for Blues Clues and a lot and inspired by Blues Clues, and we did the RD Mosh promo from it. And like I built a whole world up based on just like me wanting to play around in the world as Red Dog, but with my dog Duke, right? That I lost. I had him for like 13 years. And so it was like kind of like my homage to my dog who I miss, but I wanted to pay that tribute to him. And it was just a fun story to tell that we're spending this last adventure together, going around trying to find clues on who my opponent was going to be for HWF. So I want people to get attached to the world and know, like, hey, yo, he has this dog. He really cares about him. He has this thing going on. He really likes doing that. So I want fans to get attached to my character as opposed to Cliff. I want him to get attached to Red Dog because, hey,
and
Red Dog is still fun.
and and, and I understand what you're saying, because with me, it, you know, to tell my story, my character, it's a whole different thing. So I don't know if you've seen some of the videos on my Facebook or whatever, but I did like some like these kind of montage videos of like, since I've been doing this for a while, as you always have second guesses, so I did these videos to show the people that, I'm still in the game. I just had to change how I trained for the game, and I did all this different, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, and that tells people a little bit about what I'm going through, and the struggle to get back in the ring, and now that I'm back in the ring, and I'm going toe to toe with everybody, and you know just got that the championship last month up there at HWF, and you know I'm planning on keeping it around my waist as long as I can. So I'm not gonna like slouch on. You know, I'm coming 110%, just like I would when I was 20 years younger. You know what I mean? But now I have to have a different mindset, a different strategy, a different way of reversing something besides running up the ropes and doing a backflip, and you know you know
Yep. No, I understand. And it's funny because like when we were younger, right, in our younger years, there were things that we could do that just like we just couldn't explain. We were just like, yeah, I'm just gonna hit this move for no for and it's not even just like in wrestling, in life. We're able to do certain things that like now we just can't do. So we have to rearrange like the way we train and perform and react and and grow. And like in this, like I've only been in for 3 years, in my third year right now. So it's like I have to gather like a lot of knowledge really quick and be able to pick it up because like people are gonna look at me way differently because they're gonna be like, well, you have a lot of life experience. I'm like, you're right. And I pull a lot of that from my character, but in the same token, like I'm still really young in this business. So I'm like, teach me how to do XYZ so that like I can look like I'm still mature in this game, but I'm still kind of young in it at the same time. Like my body's not as beat up as it once was, but it's also not as young as it once was either.
but the key to that is you keep your body in shape, and that is there's a there's a line that I believe, like, there are those who want to get better and they work for it, and there are those who do the opposite. And you still have to share the ring, so you have to be prepared for everything, you know. And keeping your body in shape will help you prepare for anything that unfortunately could happen. You know what I mean? Because when your opponent's sucking wind 6 minutes into the match and they forget anything or where they're at or what they're doing, and you have to still make sure these fans go home happy. You know, you doing that is part of the, what separates certain people from other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I understand. So I'm like always like I think this week too, like the week that we're recording this, and I'm not gonna tell you what week it is, but I'm just gonna let you know the week that we're recording this, I've already planned on doing like 3 cardio sessions, 3 yoga sessions, and 4 lifting sessions, like for the week. And like I've already accomplished 2 of those, right? 2 lifting sessions. Tomorrow will probably be a yoga and a cardio day, as well as probably another lifting session. Then studying on top of that. We put a lot of energy into this business, and I think a lot of people gotta like realize like you don't. A lot of people want to play wrestler, and some
Yes.
people live to
And
be a wrestler.
I used to, man. I used to work a 40+ hour job. All right, train. Right, when I first started in the business, I was working almost 50 hours a week, and I was training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We had house shows on Tuesdays, road shows on Saturdays. If we didn't have a road show on Saturday, we had another house show. And I did that for 3+ years, and then helped set up rings, come back from road shows at midnight and have to unload the ring and put it in a building, and all that stuff. There's a lot more to the business than just, you know, taking bumps and hitting the weights. There's a lot. The more you know, the better off you are. And that's what I try to tell a lot of the younger generation, like don't don't show up late. Don't leave early. You know, help out where you can and talk to as many people as you can, because everybody has experienced this business different. Everybody has a different story. Everybody's been through something different. That's the crazy thing about wrestling. You can go 6 states across and people have experienced the same thing as you, but just in a different way, or they've learned the same kind of stuff just in a different way. So then you talk about that, and then you pick up something new, and then so on and so on and so on and so on. But you got to put in the time, you got to put in the work. It just, you don't just buy a pair of boots, know somebody who runs a show, and then automatically pretend that you're on the same level, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm on the same level as, people on TV or whatever. I've never been there. I've been to a certain level, and that's where I'm at. I like competing. I like the athleticism part of wrestling, and I get into it. My weak part is my promo, but I've been getting better at them over the years and stuff. But there's nobody that can, in my opinion, I mean, I'm sure everybody has their own opinion, but there's nobody that I feel like I've ever stepped in the ring that's had a bad match with me. Maybe in my younger years when I was still learning, but you know, I've wrestled just about anybody you can probably name, and the 5 or 6 states surrounding where we wrestle. And I've wrestled just about everywhere, and wrestled just about anybody who's they put me in the ring with. And
It's one of
and
those things that like with you, I definitely noticed, right? Because you're right. Like you've been in the ring with a lot of different people, and I've seen you with a lot of different wrestlers. And I don't think and I'll be honest, like I haven't seen you have a bad match. And it goes to you being and even making your opponents look really good, right? Because there's certain wrestlers that you get put in a ring with, and you're kind of like, I don't know why I'm working with this person, but you have this ability, and it goes with experience, right? It's something that Sicken always talks to me about, right? Is that good veterans know how to hide the weaknesses of like
Yep. Hide the weakness
anybody.
and exploit the good, hide the weak.
Yeah. And I feel like you do a really good job of like masking certain parts of like someone's like performance. Maybe they're like just they're not able to do something really well. You're able to go through and mask that really well to make it look like they're doing like $1 million.
Yeah, and that's goes with a lot of experience in wrestling. A lot of people and I've always, you know, like you're saying, you hide the weakness, exploit their strengths. So if you're used to somebody going at the same pace as you got to be able to slow down, work at the pace of your opponent, and if they're not strong enough to pick you up for like a stalling suplex, then let's just do a snap suplex. Let's you know you try to get the most out of what they can do. You know what I mean? Like, and that way, like you say, not only do they not look like a hot mess and like they don't belong, but you give them a sense of, okay, there are things that I need to work on, and this guy didn't take advantage and exploit me and make me look like an ass. So maybe I should listen to what this guy has to say.
I understand. You know, it's funny listening to you like talk that back. It was something that like I got to work. Sorry for those who pull the curtain back a little bit. I got to work Beastman at Voltage. It was the second time I got to work him. And the first time, right? The one thing he said to me, he's like, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing. But if you keep hearing that, something's wrong, and you need to figure it
Question.
out." And so, yeah. So the second time that I faced him, he was like, "Hey, you're doing a great job." He's like, "Grow, but the one thing I need you to do," and this was like the thing that I started really trying to work on, right? He's like, "I need you to listen to the crowd." I was like, "I just listen for the crowd a lot more." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so there was another match that I worked, right, at another company, and I knew that we had the crowd right at the beginning, and then like somewhere in the middle, we kind of lost the crowd, and in like the end, we went to the finish, and the crowd wasn't as hot as they were when we first showed up. And I was trying to look back, and I was listening to the match, and I was looking for like that moment where it happened, and it just dawned on me that I'm now like in a whole different. And I don't want to sound like that guy, but I was looking for a whole different level of wrestling that I haven't quite been to yet or even experienced, and I was looking for that moment. And it was just weird watching tape back and going, huh, this is like a new way of like watching wrestling. Like I'm back and I've watched certain matches 3 or 4 times, right? Not just mine. I'm just talking about like just matches in general that I deem like one of my favorites. And I know one thing that people talk about is like when you watch it the first time so you can get it out of your system, like the kid side of you, right? Then you go back and watch it, and then you're watching each wrestler when they're doing their thing. And then the last thing you're doing is you're watching the crowd. Sorry for those I'm pulling back the curtain like a whole lot for. But now you're looking for the crowd. And as I'm watching these
And,
matches back,
and
right,
not
I
only
was like,
that,
holy shit.
not to interrupt you, but not only that, because this is how part of how study tape. Not only are you looking for like how each wrestler does their thing, and you're also looking for how each wrestler reacts to what is being done to them, and like you're saying, listening to the crowd. You know that there's a, there's a lot of different things than just the move aspect. That's what. But continue. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, no. So you're right, and like just how the characters are reacting to each other, right? Like each wrestler is reacting. And the number one thing that you want to look for, and this was something that I had to start thinking about was like facial expressions and like reaction expressions. Like if someone gets hit in the face and they're just like, it was a good shot. Or you look at that dude that has like the mouth wide open, eyes bug, you're like, holy shit, what the hell was that, right? It's those little things that like I started noticing. But when I went back to watch the match I was looking at previously, I was like, yo, there's a lot of things in here that one I'm missing, but two that the other person isn't really picking up on yet, and I need to figure out how I can get everybody else involved into the match, right? And that's what we want. Like at the end of the day, what we really want as wrestlers is to like have genuine connections with the crowd. And I feel like that's what I can like draw into a crowd as a baby face. Like I think it's one of my favorite things to do. It's just like to pull the crowd into me and like let them know like I'm their fighting champion. Sometimes though, like when I get to work heel, like I love working as a heel. Oh, and I don't know anybody who if you've ever worked heel, you know why. But you can get the crowd to just hate you and then just beat the hell out of their champion. But you're giving something to the crowd to give back to you to hate you with, and it's one of those things where
You
I'm
want
like
to hate you so much that they cheer when you get your ass beat.
then that's exactly that's what I'm always thinking about. I'm like, how can I get the crowd to just dislike me to the point where they're cheering for the other guy, anything that happens to be they're cheering for. And I watch matches back now, and those are the moments I look for, because I want to look for those little filler spots, right? Like I worked I'll give another example, right? So I was working Sicken in a match, and I was working his hand the whole time, right? But one thing I did, I had his hand down, and one thing like that it just drives me fucking crazy. But when wrestlers go to stomp on somebody's hand and they just leave it there, and nothing's holding it there, they're just there, and they get stomped on. They're like, "Oh, my hand," and so I think about those things. So I like put one boot on Sicken's wrist so he couldn't move it, and I stomped on it with my other foot because I'm like, yo, like it makes sense. And so
Mhm.
like I try to incorporate those little things that make the bigger picture like better. And I feel like now like when I watch wrestling back, I watch it back now and like going from fuzzy TVs to 4K. Like I really am like it's a whole different kind of world for me. And I'm like taking notes and writing stuff down all the time, finding people to help me talk and understand this world so much better.
Yeah, and that's what like before I got in the wrestling business, I looked at wrestling just like you're saying, a whole different viewpoint. And now that I'm in wrestling, like I don't really like I don't watch wrestling as much as what I used to. Hardly at all. Like a few pay-per-views, like clips, throughout the week and stuff like that. I listen to podcasts and stuff, but when I watch wrestling nowadays, I'm looking for things. I'm looking for like the little mess ups, or can I see certain things and stuff like that, because those are things that you have to be aware of if you want to be at that level. And like it's crazy when you watch and you're like, you've been doing this for so long, you can call spots on the program that you're watching before it happens, and then it happens, and it's like, I knew that was going to happen, because you know what I mean. It's because it and so that it's like a whole different way of watching it now. Like now, there are those times where that kid comes back out in you and stuff, and like when Stone Cold came back last WrestleMania, that was a big like, oh shit, yeah, he could still go. I mean, hell, one match and how many long that you didn't even care. It was Stone Cold. He was in a match. You know what I mean? It was just like, okay, and and you remember it because it he still did what he getting back to what I was saying. You adjust to what you can do when you can do it, and at his age and not being doing it for forever and blah blah, he kept it simple to what his strengths were, and you wouldn't even have thought he was 20 years older. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. It was definitely insane, and it's funny because like I've talked to like other wrestlers who talk about that match, right? And it just brought the kid back out inside of them, and they just wanted to watch it as a fan because they're like, look, like I don't care what's happening. It's just like I'm just seeing one of my favorite workers come back, and then you just go back into that mindset. But he's still such a craftsman, like master craftsman. And when I was talking to another wrestler, I was like, yeah, I understood what they meant when they said they don't know anything. They're like, I know absolutely nothing because they're watching like here's Stone Cold 20 years out the game comes back and he's just like he looks like he never missed a step, and it's because he's like like you said he understands what he can do and he does it well what he can do, and it's just amazing to watch like those people put in that kind of work and just have so much fun with it.
yeah, and it don't help getting paid a couple million on top of it. You know, I mean, come on,
20 minutes of work, $2 million. Yeah, fuck it, I'm in. I don't got to work the rest of the year if I don't want to. Yeah, it's fine. I can do that. And then he still does the podcast. Hey, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to bring this over to one of my favorite segments of the 3 Count Podcast. It's the 3 Count Podcast 10 Count Questions. Here's how it works, Mr. Page. I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast. And whatever your answer is, that's your answer. So we're going to put on the imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing! And in the words of Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
SmackDown.
Favorite movie?
Karate Kid.
Sonic or Mario?
Mario.
Favorite actor?
Come back to that one.
Okay. Cookies or brownies?
Cookies.
Favorite cartoon?
He-Man.
Let's go. Marvel or DC?
I'm going to have to say DC for Batman.
Okay. Favorite podcast?
The Drive-Thru and the Jim Cornette Experience.
Okay. Nominate one person that you want to see on this show.
John Roden.
Okay. And then we're going to go back. Favorite actor?
Any genre, right? Any genre.
Yeah, any genre.
Damn. So many. Let's just go with... Man, let's go with... I'm trying to say, like, it's a toughie, man. Because I'm a big action guy, but they're not like, act. If you want to per se, they're action stars, but they're not like. There's not a whole lot of acting in,
right?
But if that's what you're saying, I would say maybe like Mel Gibson or Kevin Costner.
Okay. All right. And then last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person who comes on this show. Favorite curse word?
Probably shit.
It's a great word to use. Can be used for almost everything. So listen, like those are all my like big heavy hitting questions and stuff like that. So the last thing I need is for you to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
I'm on Facebook under Robbie Paige. I'm on Instagram, Wildman Robbie Paige, TikTok Robbie Paige 160. And you can find me at SWA at Shady Grove. That's Summit Wrestling Association on March 25th. On March 19th, I will be making my debut at Voltage Wrestling. And this Sunday, March 12th, I'll be in Lewistown for HWF defending the Extreme Heavyweight title.
Well, there you go. He gave you all his dates. He telling you where you can meet him at. Also, he gave you where his handles are, where you can find him at. So the last thing we gotta do, hey, we gotta do what every great part of a wrestling match is. We gotta take this home because this is the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering the Ring, and I'm your host Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. And like every good show, which I like to think I am, you have to have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. That's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring? You see him right there, right next to me. It is the man, the myth, the legend, the wild man, Robbie Paige. And you guys know what to do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you're legitimately following us on all of our social media platforms. You're subscribed to us on our YouTube channel. You're following us on Spotify. You're leaving us 5-star frog/reviews on every episode that we have for the Three Count Podcast. You're doing all that stuff. You're telling your friends about us. You're even buying our merch on foryourwear.com/the Three Count Podcast. You're doing all that great stuff, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for the outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to.
You talk so fast, you remind me of the Micro Machines Man commercial.
Love it. And Kauai.
What's going on, Three Count Nation? I'm Clifford Red Dog Miller with the catchphrase. But what I really want you to do right now, go to twitter.com, right? Go over there, find us at the 3count_pod, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a comment. We want to talk to you guys. Go to IG at the 3countpod, give us a like, give us a follow, leave us a comment. We want to interact with you. Go to youtube.com, give subscribe, turn the bell on, turn the notifications, leave a comment. We want to talk to you. Go to anchor.fm/the 3count podcast, and in there, you can leave us a message, and we will talk to you. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we want to talk to you. We want to have fun with you guys, and we love listening to what you guys have to say. Also, one thing I need you to do for me, the 3count podcast also has merchandise. Oh! At prowrestlingtees.com/the 3count pod. Please go buy our t-shirts. We love you guys, and we hope you love us too. So show us some support, please.